Hello, everyone. You're listening to the I Go with Ego podcast, bringing you guests with first-hand experience in studying abroad and seizing personalities, excelling in the workforce. Now presenting your host, Ego Kelly Ikakite.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the I Go with Ego podcast. I have two incredible guests today on the show, and they portray everything good and everything inspiring in the fight for a better world. We have London Bell, a lawyer, founder, and the president of the Bell Global Justice Institute, and of course, Himaja, a master's candidate in environmental health epidemiology at Harvard School of Public Health. And they both are the co-chair of the United Nations Association Women. Welcome to the I Go with Ego podcast. How are you both today?
We are good. Thank you so much for inviting us here today.
Yes, we're doing great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I hope you guys are enjoying the weather. It's a little bit, not so cold as it used to be from last 2 weeks. I hope you're enjoying the weather.
Absolutely.
It's been so nice. This is actually my Zoom background is a picture I took the other day. So you can see the snow and the ice kind of melting, but we're getting there.
Beautiful.
I can't wait for spring. I love spring, then the summer. Yes.
Yeah.
Cold. Anyway, welcome to the Go with Ego show again. Could you tell my audience something about you? I know they would love to get to know both of you. So if London wants to go first, then Himaja go afterwards.
Sure. Thank you, Ego. Hello, everyone. My name is London. I'm from Detroit, raised in Detroit, and I am, as you said, a lawyer, founder and president of Bell Global Justice Institute, and we are an organization working to advance human rights for women and girls. And I'm also a fellow, a 2020 African Descent Fellow for the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And I'm excited because I also work with both Ego and Himaja on UNA USA. We're all national council members, and Himaja and I are co-chairs of UNA Women. So excited to be here.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's again a pleasure to be here. So my name is Himaja. I go by she, her pronouns. I am, like you said, currently a master's student in public health. Born and raised in Massachusetts. I went to my undergrad at UConn. And yeah, I'm Indian American. That's something I'm trying to own more is my background, my heritage. So I am the oldest of 3 siblings. And it's been great. Quarantine has obviously thrown a lot of things everyone's way, but one thing that I've had the chance to do is spend more time with family, and that's something I really appreciated. So that's a little bit about me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both for being on the podcast again. Women have played a huge role in history. And before I continue, I'll say Happy Women's Month to you both. I'm glad you guys could make it here. Women have played a huge role in history as change makers, as disruptors, as agitators, and drivers of the movement for a better world. But the question is, why do we celebrate Women's History Month?
It's a good question. Himaja, would you like to take it on first?
Absolutely. I love this question because I think you can answer it however you see fit. You can answer it on the local level. One of the reasons why I feel really passionately about women's issues is because I see the disparities that my mom faced, that her grandma faced. My grandma really wanted to study medicine growing up, and she ended up having to go a different path and pursue a career in language, which she loves, but it definitely wasn't her first choice. And even just being a working woman in India was really hard for her. So I see, the disparities that are happening, in my own personal circle. And then, through the work London and I do, we also see a lot of statistics. We see the disparities of women in the workforce. We see the disparities of women having access to quality healthcare. We're seeing the prevention of women from being able to access, important resources for their education, for food security, you name it. There's so many disparities that are going in, and all of these are intersectional. And I think that, that's one of the reasons why we celebrate this month. It's really the entirety of this month is really just taking a moment to recognize how vital women are to the contributions of our society and how so underappreciated they are historically and currently.
Yeah, I 100% agree, Himaja. You know, it's Women's Month is important to outline, to show the unique challenges that women and girls face around the world. And also, I think another important part of Women's Month is to celebrate the trailblazers, whether you're in, government, or, the UN, or on your block, making a difference. Women and girls are truly making the world better in all areas, particularly through COVID-19. We have a lot of women working to support their families, working their jobs, and going to school and raising children, sometimes all in the same day, all at home, virtually. And so it's celebrating those triumphs that we're doing too.
Absolutely, beautiful answers there. And it just reminds me too of my mom. Growing up, I grew up with my mom. My dad left the town to go work and hustle, but she embodied everything. She's working, she's coming from the farm, she's getting money, she's training us, so there's so much burden that the women face and carry in society, that I tell people my greatest role model is my mom. Even though she's late today, but I still love her. Those virtues, that she instilled in me and my siblings, is what is keeping us going, today, and I hope in the future as well too. So
yes,
So
absolutely.
yeah, what are some of the biggest challenges that women face today? And how would this change in the next 20 or 10 years from now?
One of the things that I see as a really, really big challenge is gender-based violence. It's a devastating, there are devastating statistics in Detroit and beyond, all over the world. And I think there needs to be a turning point, a change in our culture, our society, and how we see gender-based violence, the role we see of men and women. And there needs to be accountability for the violence committed against women and girls around the world. Through COVID, one of my biggest concerns about quarantining is there are going to be people that are quarantining at home that are already going through gender-based violence. And so more people are going to be in danger, more women and girls. So that's one of the biggest issues that I see, in addition to, having access to healthcare and jobs, particularly through COVID-19. But I think my biggest concern right now is gender-based violence. And Himaja, what about you?
I 100% agree. I think that, right now we're seeing the disparities in vaccine distribution for women and girls. And it's just one health issue. It's literally the tip of the iceberg for how many maternal and child and women's health issues there are that prevent a significant portion of the population from being able to access basic health needs, especially during a time like COVID. And we see that, like I said, with the vaccine distribution effort. We see that with being able to access hospital care. We see that with more women and more women of color having to serve in required jobs that demand that they go in person.
Yeah.
These high risk jobs. So it's really through all these different factors that we see this disparity occur. And another issue that I think is kind of related to this is the lack of women in power, in positions of power and decision making capacities, because as we see, and this is something that has been discussed both at the UN and at the local level, is that having more women in positions of public health leadership, for example, is vital to making sure that women and children and other vulnerable groups have access to care. When you have representation at the highest level, there's a little bit more certainty that the care and resources that vulnerable groups need will be addressed. And that's something we've seen. We've seen these gaps happen, and they happen here in Massachusetts. They happen around the world. So I think that's another thing. And I think it even just extends beyond public health. I think we just need more women in leadership positions. And I think that's something, London and I always talk about when we talk about UNA women, is because, at the end of the day, having a seat at the table and having an active vote and an active voice in decision-making spaces is vital to making sure that the voices of women and girls are represented in every sector. So I think that's another gap that we're seeing, that we're actively trying to work toward bridging. And there are a lot of great organizations that are doing that. But honestly, the fight is just getting started.
Absolutely. You can take a look at history when women lead. The difference between women's leading and men leading, women do better off than men. I don't want to share anybody, but last 4 years, you can see what happened, and you can see what happened in other countries where women were presidents. You can tell, you can judge for yourself. So who's the most influential woman either dead or alive, who has inspired you, and how has she inspired you?
I would say for me, my mother, Pamela, she's my best friend. And she became a single mom when I was a kid, a teenager, and there were 3 of us at home, but she raised us to have strong values, and she got her bachelor's degree, she got 2 master's degrees. She has a profession, she's in a professional role, and she has been a community leader. She's gone to Capitol Hill, she's gone in all the places that I am now going because I saw her do it first. So she has survived so much, and so she's taught me about hard work, patience, and what it looks like to be resilient. And so she is my role model, and I still seek her counsel on everything. So
Absolutely.
What about you, Himaja?
Honestly, I echoed that completely. My mom is one of my biggest role models, someone I look up to. And kind of like what you said, London, like my mom too has gone through a lot of turbulences and a lot of difficulties in her life that she's had to overcome. Being in India, being a young woman, having an arranged marriage, coming to America with very little support systems in place. But I also want to highlight my sister because I feel like I don't talk about her enough, but she truly is one of the most inspirational people in my life. She is so unapologetically herself, and it's been really hard for me as the years have gone by to be able to share my story. And honestly, I can say that I've been more confident in sharing my story and being more, embracing of my background and who I am because she's done it. And she's my younger sister by 3 years. So, she constantly inspires me. And it just really comes to show how, the people in our life, whether they're younger than us or older than us, can hold important places in our heart and can be the reason why we do what we do.
Yeah, I have a younger sister that's exactly 3 years younger than me. She is a social worker. She is absolutely brilliant, and I look up to her. Yeah, so I'm with you there.
There's something about we, the younger ones, we just try to do our elders, but it's okay. Same thing my elder brother and sisters tell me that you do so much, you're everywhere. Like, well, that's me. That's life. I was telling my friend today that it's funny how, or it's amazing. Not funny, it's amazing how when you ask kids who their role model are, they always call the mom before the dad. Dads have to do better. Dads have to do a great job. Honestly, we have to do better. Honestly, yeah. Apart from my mom, I would say Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela is my role model. Even apart from whatever they said happened, she did then, but she was one of the reasons why Mandela was able to leave prison. She kept on fighting for justice, for freedom, against apartheid. And she's someone I look up to as an African, like, yeah, you know what, Mama Winnie, she's my bestie,
Yes.
So God bless her soul.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Himaja and London. You've heard from my two wonderful friends. When we come back from the short break, we will go on to talk about UNA USA, and we'll go on to talk about all the wonderful and good things they have to do in the future. We'll be right back. Hi, everybody. Welcome back from the short break. I still have my wonderful friend London Bell and Himaja here. And, our beloved Eleanor Roosevelt once said, a woman is like a tea bag. You can't tell how strong she is until you put her in hot water. I don't know why she said that, but, how does this quote relate to feminism and the struggle for equal rights?
When I think of this quote, I immediately think, we're not going anywhere. We are here. We've been here. We're going to be here, and we're going to continue to move towards the goal of gender equality and gender equity. And we're going to, as the generations move forward, even more people are going to join us. And so when I think of, particularly of Eleanor Roosevelt, I think of that because look at what she was able to accomplish, as First Lady of the United States, as, part drafter of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I mean, you can go on and on. So she is just an example, and her quote is an example of, we are here, that's what comes to mind for me.
Awesome.
I 100% echo that. I think that, one thing that we always say is that when we talk about gender equity and advocacy around gender equity, a lot of people that are in this movement that are advocating for these rights are people that are in this fight because they have personally experienced inequality, and they've experienced it maybe in their everyday life, or they've seen a loved one experience it, or they've seen it on the news. And it's never, like, I've rarely seen it not be personal for women to talk about women's rights. And I think that's a really big thing, because that means that when we talk about gender equity and gender equality, and we're talking about equal rights in healthcare, in the workforce, in whatever sector you're thinking about, we're talking about it because we've seen it, we've experienced it, we've lived it, we've seen the struggle. And we've been inspired by people who have struggled in the past, who had to have struggled because they put everything they had into making these rights so that we would be here in this moment, raising our voice to address other inequities. It's kind of a weird dynamic, but it really just speaks to how long this effort has been going on and how personal this effort is to every single one of us. And even if you're a man, that doesn't mean that you talk about gender inequity or inequality from, a third person perspective. Because when we talk about gender rights, we're talking about LGBTQ plus rights. We're talking about, men who maybe saw like their moms or sisters or women who were significant in their lives go through struggles and go through difficulties. And so gender, and that's one of the reasons why I think that this type of advocacy is so special, because you rarely don't talk about it from a personal perspective. Every single one of us has a stake in it. And so, just, that's something I think London and I always reflect on, and we especially reflect on it during this month, is that the reason why we're doing this is not for anything but to raise awareness and to, talk about maybe our personal experiences that have shaped us to this moment and that we know may not be individual to ourselves. The struggles that we've gone through, others may have gone through more, others may have gone through less. Regardless of what you've gone through to get to this point, there is still inequality, and it manifests in so many different aspects of society. And so inevitably you do speak from the heart with this. And so, I love this quote about, only knowing your strength when you're in the fire, because I think that for a lot of gender advocates, they've realized the strength of their voice because they've been through that personal trials and tribulations to get to that point of being like, no, my voice is needed in this space.
Absolutely. Well said. Absolutely well said. UNA USA. Do you want to tell my audience about UNA women and why women should get involved in advocacy and as well as join UNA USA?
Yeah, UNA USA. What can I say? It's an extraordinary organization.
Yes, yes.
It has been a life-changing experience for me personally because of my ability to have access to all, UN advocates, gender equity advocates, around the country, to be able to go to the UN and hear from UN experts. UNA Women is an affinity group of UNA USA, and our purpose is to effectively engage UNA members and partners and the general public on gender equality, gender equity, and the intersectional human rights of women and girls locally and globally. And so we have a large number of our UNA members who belong to UNA Women. And so, we have a lot of different programming, and I'll let Himaja tell us more about the programming that we have. But yeah, it's a great program.
Thank you so much, London. It really is a great program. I think both London and I will 1000% agree on the fact that, UNA Women and being a part of UNA USA has changed our lives and has made us stronger advocates for causes that we've cared about, but maybe weren't sure exactly how to navigate in the advocacy realm. At least that's how it was for me. UNA Women has a lot of great initiatives that we lead. We try to host webinars on a monthly, typically it's a bi-monthly basis. We were just talking about this the other day. So normally with these webinars, we'll try to make them as interdisciplinary as possible. London led this really great webinar on women and disabilities and the additional challenges a woman with disabilities face in our society. We've also held recently a gender-based violence webinar where we invited a group of community leaders from all across the country who are doing work in their local communities on gender-based violence to speak to our members about the work they do and how we can get more involved in advocacy for gender-based violence, because oftentimes it is talked about as an issue that happens internationally and that doesn't manifest on the local level, and that could not be more untrue. Mm-hmm. And I think that London said it really well as kind of one of the big areas of interest at the UN and UNA Women addressing gender-based violence. We also host a lot of things around the Commission for the Status of Women. So London and I love what we do for that. Yes. We normally, it's literally our favorite time of the year. We put together a delegation this year because it's virtual. We have, I think, almost 50 delegates who will be representing UNA USA at the Commission on the Status of Women. And for those who don't know it, it's the annual UN conference purely focused on gender equality and women's rights. It's a really heartwarming conference to be a part of. Normally, London and I use it as an excuse to go to New York, but this year it's all virtual. So it'll be via our computers, but very fun, very exciting times for that. And we are actively, working to get our members represented in all the different forums and town halls within the Commission for the Status of Women. And another aspect of the Commission on the Status of Women is the parallel events they hold. So London and I will be hosting a panel on behalf of UNA Women. We're so excited for it. We have representation from all backgrounds on that. And then London's hosting her own parallel event on behalf of Bell Global Justice. It's honestly just such a charged time. But yeah, London, do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, and we'll make sure and send you the information for both. I'm excited. Like the parallel events, there's going to be like 700 parallel events from organizations around the planet. That will be talking about all things gender equity, women and girls empowerment. And UNA USA will be hosting a parallel event called Together We Can, Ubuntu for Gender Equity and the SDGs. And so we're going to be talking to local women who are community leaders working to fulfill the SDGs through a gender lens, particularly through partnerships throughout their communities. And so that's going to be wonderful. We have 4 speakers, and Himaja and I are going to be panelists. And then on March 24th, my organization, Bell Global Justice Institute, will be hosting a parallel event called Visible Voices, an intersectional and intercultural discussion on women decision makers. And so Himaja is going to be on that panel, and I'm excited because we're going to be talking to community leaders, women from different backgrounds and cultures, on how they navigate decision-making spaces, just where you were talking about a few minutes ago about, you know, being in spaces where you have a vote, where you have a voice. And we're gonna hear from women who are doing that and what that looks like, what that feels like. So yeah, one of the other things I wanted to add about UNA Women and Bell Global Justice Institute is that for me, being a part of both, what I really appreciate are the stories, storytelling. You know, women, the women and men who belong to UNA Women are, you know, they tell their stories. We bond through, and it's intergenerational, it's intercultural. It is just people from all backgrounds are sharing their stories, but also learning how to take the information that we do share with each other to, you know, go out there and do the work. And same with Bell Global. So I think that's what I most appreciate about doing the work.
Wow, it's so fascinating. Now I want to be a part of it. So, but I just remembered my friend from South Africa told me in 2018 he came for the UN Women's Conference in New York.
Really?
And he anchored one of the sessions. So he's going to be virtual this year because he can't come off COVID. He's back in South Africa. So I look forward to attending. I'll ask you guys for the link. I need the links to attend. So yes.
Oh
please.
yeah.
We will send all of them.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So Mae Jameson, the first Black woman to travel in space, once said, "Never limit yourself because of others' limited imagination. Never limit others because of your own limited imagination." Why is this sentiment so important, and how does it relate to Women's History Month?
That's a good question. Himaja, would you like to go and give us your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the whole concept of women supporting women is one that is paramount. And it's really, and I think this kind of comes back to why I love UNA USA so much, is because you develop a network of friends, in the advocacy space. And for me, I didn't realize the importance of that until I stepped out of it. And that's when I realized it is hard to be an advocate. It is hard to be in spaces where people don't understand where you're coming from, who don't understand that gender inequity and inequality is an issue. And it's really hard to empathize and to connect with people who don't think the same way you do. And it's refreshing to have a network of people. And I'm not saying we all think alike. And that's the beauty of it, because we all bring our different perspectives to the table, but we're all grounded in this realization that gender equality is a human right. It is something that every single one of us should have recognized. We should all have equal access to a good quality of life, to a happy quality of life. And this should be the case for anyone. And I think that concept, being grounded in human rights, is something that I've loved being able to connect with other UNA USA members on. And so I think, yeah, like women supporting women, like finding your friends, finding spaces of comfort in otherwise places of tension, which we are basically surrounded with at this point, is very, very key. And I think we all play a role. And Ego, I really want to give credit to you. For example, you creating this space right now for me and London to speak about our experiences in a safe and approachable manner. Like that in itself is you doing a huge service. It's making us feel comfortable. It's making your viewers feel comfortable. It's creating spaces of acceptance and growth that are critical to moving forward in the right direction. And so it's women supporting women, it's men supporting men. It's about us creating these safe places, and not only just creating safe places, but also actively working within these spaces to take action. I think that's also a critical component of that. But yeah.
Yeah, that is beautifully said. I love it. I love it.
Thank you.
And I want to add that, when we think about dreams and limiting our own imaginations or working to limit others' imaginations, it's like, what about the possibilities when we don't limit our imaginations? The possibilities are endless on how women and girls particularly can be a part of the movement forward. Like, if we limited our imagination and we limited others, we wouldn't have Vice President Harris. We wouldn't have Mae Jameson would not have been able to travel to space. And so this quote to me reminds me of just continuing to dream, I think, and to continue to create spaces where others can dream and we all continue to move forward. It's about creating those spaces, those safe spaces.
London, you connected my thoughts so well right there. That was absolutely beautiful. Exactly. Because we want young women, young girls, old women, old girls, whatever age you are, whatever background you are, to dream of a better future. And it starts by creating places and gathering activism together and really creating concerted efforts that really drive positive change forward. So I love how you connected that. That was beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
London brought up our first female vice president. So we have our first female vice president, Kamala Harris, which I'm so excited for. She's a woman of color that broke all the glass ceilings that have held us back over the years.
Yes.
So what does her emergence mean to women and girls out there?
First of all, it just means the world to me. I think I cried when just the emotion, and a lot of the women in my family, we've just been so excited to see her rise and to be our vice president. And then I look at my little cousins. I have a little cousin who's 7, and she's very outspoken. She's very confident, and she could be our vice president. She can be our president. She can be anything she wants. And so to see Vice President Harris be able to do this, it's a beautiful thing. It really is a beautiful thing. And so when I look at my little cousins, that's what I dream about for them.
Roger?
I absolutely love that. And I have an interesting anecdote about this because when I was at UConn, I helped run our TEDx UConn chapter. And one of the women that we invited as a speaker, she was an undergraduate student as well. And she was on the campaign. She worked on the campaign for Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. And she remembers, because there was a whole rhetoric around the election about breaking the glass ceiling with Clinton, that maybe we can do this. Maybe we can finally achieve this change that we've been waiting for really long. And she remembers as one of the volunteers, she literally was helping cut up pieces of paper into little glass shards. And they held them, they suspended them up in these balloons, so that when Clinton would be announced as president, if that happened, they would release all these glass shards. So it would be she was breaking the glass ceiling. And the results came in and she didn't win. And that anecdote stuck with me till now, because this is something we've been waiting for. As women, we've been waiting for change for so long. And to see Kamala up there, to see her in this leadership position that we've been waiting for so long, it just comes to show that change is happening. And it's slow. It's really slow to happen, but it is happening and there is hope. And I think that, it's a very delicate balance of being enough pessimistic to be motivated to continue doing the work because you realize change is still needed, but there also needs to be an element of optimism as well. I think we're privileged to be optimistic, but I think that optimism plays a cool role in this because it gives us that goal to attain for. It gives us that hope at the end of the tunnel, the light at the end of the tunnel. That's the word I was looking for. And, even though the glass ceiling didn't break with Hillary Clinton, I like to think that, we saw it break with Kamala, and we'll continue seeing it break. And as more women climb to these higher positions of leadership, I hope we also see a trickle down effect where we have young women in local positions of leadership also being inspired because they see their idols in these places doing great change. And actually not idols, because we don't want to idolize anyone, but they're role models in these places of change. There we go. But yeah, it's honestly so exciting to see.
Yeah, just to add quickly, one of the things that I like about Kamala is that she's so relatable. So when we see her, many of us see our aunt, we see our mom, we see our sister, we see our homegirl, so and that, I think that brings us closer and inspires us to keep moving forward because of how we see her, how we see ourselves. So her role is very significant for women and girls everywhere.
Absolutely. She embodies all we hope to be, the way she carries herself. I was telling my friend the other day, I said she was ready for the moment. She was built for the moment. She's always the first. You have to somehow be the first. I don't know how it's going to be, but just do something and be ready so that when the time comes, there'll be no stopping you. In 2016, I was in Nigeria. I was still in Nigeria in 2016. But I've always followed American politics right from small.
Really?
I remember when I was very, very little, when Clinton was president and he came to Nigeria with Hillary. And that's where I loved Hillary from, And coming to 2016, I was at home. I was up all night watching the results. And when she didn't win, I cried. I cried so much. My sisters were like, take it easy. It's good. It's good. Because I was supposed to leave the next year to America. I had this hope of Hillary being the president. I'm coming to America the next year. Oh yes, women president, but it didn't happen. But I came, and I saw Kamala Harris and of course Joe, such a wonderful person, and I know that the glass ceiling will still be shattered very soon. In the next 4, 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, it will be shattered in our time. Time. Absolutely. All right. Before I let you both go, for young ladies and women that would like to get involved in UNA USA or get involved in UNA Women, how do they reach out to you, and how can they do that?
Yes. Go to unausa.org. The website is wonderful, and there's so much information, so many ways that a person can get involved, and then join UNA USA. If you are a student or a young person, is it 26 and younger?
Yes.
Okay, then your membership is free. And then there are different levels of membership. I think as low as $25, you can become a member of UNA USA. And at that time, join UNA Women, as well as the other affinity groups. We have the Human Rights Affinity Group. We have an Educators Affinity Group, Young Professionals, and we all work together. So that it will be a great benefit to have more voices, more powerful voices at the table. So yeah. Start by going to unausa.org. Himaja, would you like to add anything?
I love that. And also check out our social media. UNA Women has a Facebook page. London and I are also trying to do Instagram lives. I have to say I'm a little old soul with technology, so it's definitely been a learning curve. I remember our first Instagram live, I think I was late by 5 minutes because I was like, how do I go live? Like, I don't know.
And I'm just pressing buttons.
We just hope it lands on the right one. We love hosting the Instagram lives just because it allows us to connect to people in a really informal way, and just share like what's going on and what are our hopes and any personal anecdotes that we can share to others, and also have people reach out to us and share their personal anecdotes, because like London said, stories are so incredibly powerful, more than we can ever imagine when it comes to leading change. So yeah, check out social media, websites there, like London said. And yeah, join your local chapter, because at the end of the day, London and I do a lot of work to put out toolkits and materials and resources for our local chapters to use and be empowered and then go do amazing work in their own communities. So definitely join your local chapter because local action is really how we're going to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, including Sustainable Development Goal 5, which is gender equality.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, you've heard it from two magnificent powerhouses in you and the USA. You see why I brought them on the podcast, because they have such great wealth of knowledge in terms of human rights, women's rights, gender equality, gender equity. And I'm so grateful on behalf of the team to have both of you on the podcast. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
all the incredible work you're doing, Ego. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, don't forget, guys, the COVID-19 is still real. Please wear your mask when it's your turn to take the vaccine. Please get the vaccine. Call your friends, call your neighbors, and everyone around you. Because I'll tell you this: when it's my turn, I'll be the first on the line to get the vaccine. So social distance till we are free to hang out again. And please don't forget to follow us on all our social media handle at I Go With Ego. Thank you, guys. Stay safe. I'll see you guys some other time. Have a good one.